There was no darkness, no fear, no past, just them, and she whispered, "Then don't let me become something you can't love." And Jack didn't hesitate, his voice steady, his gaze unwavering. "That's not possible." And in that moment, they didn't hold back, not out of recklessness, but out of truth, because love that has already faced loss doesn't fear intensity, it embraces it. And as he pulled her closer, as their foreheads touched, as their breaths mixed in the cold air, everything else faded. And this time, when the moment came, when the line between restraint and surrender blurred completely, Elsa didn't step back, because some feelings, no matter how dangerous, demand to be felt. And as their connection deepened, not just physically but emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, the world around them reacted, the ice beneath them cracking slightly, the air shifting, the darkness within her stirring, not violently, but curiously, as if trying to understand something it had never experienced before. Because even something born from fear and pain had never known love like this. And that was when everything changed again, because what they thought was a weakness might have been the only thing strong enough to fight it. And yet, just as hope began to form, reality reminded them that nothing comes without a price, because the entity within Elsa wasn't silent anymore. It was learning, adapting, feeding not just on fear, but on the intensity of their bond, growing stronger with every emotion they refused to suppress. And as the wind picked up once more, not chaotic but controlled, as shadows formed where there should have been none, Elsa pulled away suddenly, her expression shifting, her eyes flickering with something that wasn't entirely hers. And Jack saw it again, that presence, clearer now, more confident. And for the first time since she returned, he realized that this wasn't just a battle they could win by staying together. It was something far more complicated. Because love wasn't just their strength anymore, it was also the entity's greatest source of power. And as Elsa stepped back, her voice trembling between herself and something else, she whispered words that felt like both a confession and a warning. "If you stay, you might be the reason I lose myself again." And Jack, despite everything, despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, didn't move, didn't step away. Because some choices aren't made with logic, they're made with the heart. And he answered softly but firmly, "Then I'll stay, even if it destroys me." And in that moment, the wind roared, not in anger, but in recognition, because the story that was unfolding was no longer just about survival. It was about how far love could go before it became something else entirely, something darker, something unstoppable. And somewhere deep within Elsa, behind the fear, behind the control, behind the growing shadow, a part of her held on to that truth. Because no matter what she became, no matter what she might lose, one thing remained unbreakable, and that was the way she felt when she looked at him, not as a queen, not as a weapon, not as a vessel of something dangerous, but simply as someone who had found something real in a world that had always been cold. And that was the one thing the darkness could never fully take, because even in the deepest shadows, even in the most broken forms, love like theirs doesn't disappear. It evolves, it fights, it waits, and sometimes it becomes the very thing that decides the end of everything. Moving unnaturally, alive with intention, and the war began, not as a physical clash, but as a battle of control, of will, of identity. Elsa's powers surging in waves that reshaped the landscape, towering walls of ice rising and collapsing, the sky darkening as if reality itself was bending under the pressure of what she had become. And Jack moved through it all, not attacking, not defending, but reaching, always reaching, dodging shards of ice that could shatter mountains, calling her name not as a command, but as a reminder, because he knew this wasn't about overpowering her, it was about bringing her back. And yet, every second that passed, the entity grew stronger, adapting, learning, using her love as fuel, amplifying every emotion until it became something uncontrollable. And Elsa screamed, not in anger, but in pain, her voice echoing across the frozen battlefield. Why won't you just let me go? And Jack stopped, just for a second, his chest rising and falling as he looked at her, not as an opponent, but as the person he had fallen for. And he said something that changed everything. Because losing you once already destroyed me, I won't survive it twice. And for a moment, time hesitated, because those words reached deeper than anything else had, cutting through layers of darkness, touching something untouched, something real. And Elsa's expression shifted, her eyes softening as tears formed, freezing before they could fall, and she whispered, almost like a memory, "Then don't make me the reason you break again." But the entity would not allow that moment to grow. It reacted violently, surging forward, taking control more aggressively than ever before, her body moving against her will, her powers exploding outward in a force so intense it sent Jack crashing across the ice, the ground beneath him cracking as he struggled to stand. And now the truth became undeniable. This was no longer something that could be undone by words alone. The war did not begin with an explosion, nor with a scream, but with a silence so heavy it felt like the world itself was waiting for permission to fall apart. And standing at the center of that silence was Elsa, no longer just a queen, no longer just a girl who feared her own power, but something far more complex, far more dangerous, a being caught between light and darkness, love and destruction, her presence alone shifting the air as the entity within her finally stopped hiding.